Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here at Eisei-en. It is bright and early, 6 a.m. here out in the garden. Just came out to check on the trees, see what happened overnight in terms of the weather, see if it rained a little bit. It did not. So we are going to be watering first thing this morning, and I'm actually going to be applying our last application of liquid fertilizer, both root drenching and foliar feeding to the trees today, just before the trees go dormant. So temperatures are starting to change a little bit here in Nashville. Not truly into deep fall quite yet. The colors haven't really started changing on the deciduous trees yet, but I do want to still hit everything with the liquid fertilizer to pump the trees up going into dormancy so they're nice and healthy and they can have a nice winter. Now, before we do that this morning though, we're going to head over to the house and we're going to lift a little bit. Oh, you ready? You go. Go on. Good catch. So before we get started with the fertilization and watering this morning, I want to show you some new trees that just came into the garden yesterday. This right here is a short leaf pine, or Pinus echinata. This was collected over in the Missouri area by a good friend of mine, Kurt Dillow. Brought the trees in yesterday, actually, and I was blown away by the quality of the material. Now, most of the time when people are out collecting, whether that be in the United States, Japan, or in Europe, they're looking for the gnarliest, wildest, most twisted, contorted, short, compact little trees. Now, on the flip side, most people are not collecting very soft, elegant, elongated Bunjin or literati style trees. You see them all over the place, but nobody really spends the time digging them out because I guess they feel like maybe they're not going to turn into great bonsai, or they're just not as interesting as the contorted guys. But I'm so pumped that Kurt went out and actually collected some Bunjin style trees that we can build out here at the nursery. So this is a native US species that we're still experimenting with a little bit. We believe it might be a double flush pine, but we're still experimenting. We're going to go forward with it next summer, decandling some of these guys and see how they respond. But super excited to have these in the garden. Cannot wait to work on them. We might even do them as a BONSAI-U episode in the near future. Alright, so we're going to start the fertilization process here, and as I mentioned earlier, this is a liquid fertilizer that we're going to be root drenching and foliar feeding on all of the trees. Now, I do this throughout the growing season about every 10 days or so. You could get away with doing this, say, once a month if you wanted to, but I'd recommend doing this at least a couple of times a month if you can. And the way I set this up is I put liquid fertilizer into an easy flow system that then attaches to our hose system here, and it's basically like a fertilizer injector system. I can water through the hose, spray all the trees, water the soil, and the fertilizer will get dispersed through the hose at whatever rate I'm wanting to apply it from the easy flow system. Now, in terms of what I'm putting in the easy flow system here, I'm doing mostly liquid fish and liquid kelp, and that's a pre-mixed product that I get online from a company called GS Plant Food. If you want the full list of what I put into the fertilization system here and how we fertilize each of our trees depending on the stage of development from early development through refinement, definitely consider signing up for BONSAI-U, our online bonsai learning platform, via the link in the description down below. Now, what I'm going to do here is water every tree in the nursery, and we're doing this early in the morning right now because the temperatures are a bit lower. The stomata on the leaves, or what are essentially like pores on the foliage, are going to be open at this time of day, and they're going to take up a lot of that fertilizer through the foliage and through the roots as well. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So at the moment, we're in the process of getting the nursery cleaned up and rearranged for our upcoming open house, which is going to be on October 29th and 30th this year. So this will be the first time that we've really opened back up to the public officially since we opened the nursery in 2018, so a little over 4 years ago. So I'm really excited to show all of you guys out there who want to stop by what the nursery looks like, having been transformed over the last 4 years. We're chock full of trees at the moment. A lot of stuff we're maintaining for students and clients. So we've got kind of an art gallery set up in the upper two gardens, but in the lower garden, we have a ton of material from nursery stock all the way up to finished bonsai that are going to be for sale at this open house. We've also got a ton of new pots in the workshop, as well as tools, stands, and a whole bunch of other stuff that will be for sale as well. So if you're interested in stopping by, seeing the garden, exploring the nursery, and maybe picking up something for your bonsai collection, check out the link in the description down below. So fall here at the nursery, it's one of those times of year where things get a little bit hectic. We've got a ton of new trees that have come in recently from students and clients that are needing to be styled up outside of the workshops and classes that we host here. So I have a lot of trees that I've got lined up that I need to get done between now and our open house in just a couple of weeks. So I'm getting a little overwhelmed with some of this. I haven't been sleeping well lately. I've been getting up about 4:35 in the morning every day to come out here and get started super early. So a bit of stress kind of adding up at this time of year, but that's normal. Always when the temperatures change a little bit, we get a flood of new work into the garden. Speaking of work at the garden, we also recently took down our shade cloth here at the nursery. I usually put up 30% shade cloth from about early June until sometime in late September, early October when the temperatures start dipping again. And this last week, it was time to remove that shade cloth. So it's all been pushed back, stored away against the sides of the fence here. But I have to make sure that I time this just right, because if I do it too early and the temperatures spike again, a lot of the trees that have been under shade all summer will get fried. If I wait too late into the fall season, we end up with major fungal problems under the shade cloth. So timing gets a little bit tricky, and as I've said in previous videos, if I could have a retractable shade cloth, that would solve a lot of problems. But for the moment, we have this permanent cloth here that only gets moved out once in June and then pulled back again sometime in early fall. So one of the most recent jobs that came into the nursery this fall was this giant Rocky Mountain juniper behind me here. This tree is owned by a good friend of mine, Dat Tran, over in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I actually initially styled this tree, I believe, 6 years ago while I was still living in Japan. Came back on a teaching and workshop tour here in the United States, stopped by Dat's place for a day and styled this guy up. So since then, he's managed to work with the branches quite well, keep everything kind of locked into place for the most part. He put it really into a very small container by Ron Lang that actually matches the tree super, super well. I have no idea how he managed to cram it in there all at once, but it looks really, really good. The only trouble with this tree is that the foliage has reverted a little bit, not to juvenile, but it's actually started producing little cones all over it. So it's a bit difficult to work with when this happens. This is just an indication that this tree is a male. I think it probably had to do maybe with the stress of putting it in the smaller pot, and that's why all of the foliage produced these cones everywhere. But over time, we should be able to get it to revert back a little bit, hopefully, if we can kind of de-stress the tree to some degree. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes the trees will remain with these cones all over the foliage, and there's nothing you can really do about it. You just kind of have to roll with it. But in terms of wiring a plant like this is some of the most difficult foliage to wire up and create nice, beautiful pads with. But I think it turned out okay, and Dat's going to be entering this, I believe, in the Winter Silhouette Show this year. So one of the more challenging things at this time of year in the autumn at a bonsai nursery is adjusting the watering schedule. You know, all summer long we've been checking water at least twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, just because it's so hot here. The water tends to evaporate very quickly and the trees dry out. Well, as the trees start to slowly shut down just a little bit going into fall, they of course are taking up a little bit less water. So I'm still checking the trees twice a day, but typically most of the plants by this time of year have pretty much shut down for the most part. So we only have to water once per day. Now I did fertilize bright and early this morning, so that meant that by late afternoon most of the trees in the garden had dried out again. But on a typical day at this time of year, I would be watering probably either just before or just after lunch, and that would get us through a full 24-hour cycle without the trees really drying out too much. But it's still always a good idea at this time of year to check the trees twice a day just for safety's sake. And then as we move into the winter, we'll switch over to checking just once per day. All right, this of course brings me to the best part of the day, and that's finishing up with a nice cold beer. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode here on YouTube. If you want to dive deeper into bonsai art and design, of course, check out our BONSAI-U platform via the link in the description. We're going to be posting a lot more videos up on there coming up here shortly, as well as some more vlog style videos up here on YouTube as we get later into fall and into the winter. So thank you guys for checking out this episode. Look forward to seeing all of you guys next time around, but until then, take care.